Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Svatara Dvarakacharyas Divine Grace Abhay Charanam Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Natakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Shri Gangamai Ki Jai, Shri Jamunamai Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. We're reading from the 10th canto. This is chapter 45. And I'm going to start at text 41, and I'm just going to go through the next few texts because there's quite a lot here, and there's a lot to unpack. And I think it's text 42 through 44, and it may continue through tomorrow because there's just. Yeah, there's a lot, and there's so much to be said about this whole pastime. Om Jnana Tiramandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Meritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nivishesha Sunyavari Paschata Deshatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bir Krishna Das Goswami Niti Namine Namam Sanikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Sudrida Sudina Syamam Tasha Bhakti Marine. Okay, so this is text 41. Aste tenharito nunam Tachrutva satvara prabhu Jalama vishyatam hatva Napashyarudare raktam. Devotees? Aste tenarito nunam Chatrutva satvaram prabhu Lama vishyatam hatva Napashyarudare bhaktam Aste tenarito nunam Tatrutva satvaram prabhu Chalama vishyatam hatva Napashyarudare bhaktam. Oh, thank you. Aste, he is there. Tena, by him. Pankajana. Ahrita, taken away. Nunam, indeed. Tat, that. Srutva, hearing. Satyavram, with haste. Prabhu, the Lord. Jalam, the water. Avishya, entering. Tam, him, the demon. Hatva, killing. Na apashat, did not see. Udare, in his abdomen. Arbakyam, the boy. Translation, indeed, the ocean said, that demon has taken him away. Hearing this, Lord Krishna entered the ocean, found Panchajana, and killed him. But the Lord did not find the boy within the demon's belly. Translation, indeed, the ocean said, that demon has taken him away. Hearing this, Lord Krishna entered the ocean, found Panchajana, and killed him. But the Lord did not find the boy within the demon's belly. So that feeds into the next text. But just to pause about this, I was finding it quite astounding. We know from this chapter, and we're well into it now, that Krishna went to a Gurukula, to the ashram of Sandipani Muni, so he could be ostensibly taught so many things that young children would learn in the Gurukul. And then he was very pleased with Sandipani Muni and offered to give him a boon. And the teacher asked Krishna to return his son, who had died, who had actually, he said, had been taken, the ocean had taken him. And so Krishna, out of his absolute supreme kindness and reciprocation, particularly on the part of every living being, but also, particularly for his guru, who he was listening to very astutely and taking so much instruction from on how to sort of live. That's what the guru does, is he gives us instruction on how to conduct ourselves and how to live our lives in the most Krishna conscious way. So, Krishna went to rescue his teacher's son from the ocean. And even to that extent, how merciful is he to have did all this legwork and went into the ocean to find this, son of his teacher, to find this boy. And, Ocean Incarnate, of course, received him nicely. But, Krishna, it was fruitless. He found the demon that the ocean had said had taken the boy, and wasn't able to find him still. So I was just reflecting how merciful Krishna is to even have, in every little instance, he tries his best to reciprocate with his devotees. So text 42 through 44, maybe we can just all read along because it's quite a long Sanskrit text. Taranga prabhavam sankyam adaya ratamagamat tata samyamanim nama yamasha dayitam purim gatva janardana sankyam pradadmao sahalayuda sanka niradamakarnya rajasamya manoyama tayo saparya mahatim chakre bhakyupa brimhitam uvacha vanata krishnam sarvabhuta shayalayam lila manushayor vishnu yuvayo karavamakim. Translation: Lord Janardana took the conch shell that had grown around the demon's body and went back to the chariot. Then he proceeded to Samyamani, the beloved capital of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. Upon arriving there with Lord Balaram, he loudly blew his conch shell, and Yamaraj, who keeps the conditioned souls in check, came as soon as he heard the resounding vibration. Yamaraj elaborately worshipped the two lords with great devotion, and then he addressed Lord Krishna, who lives in everyone's heart. O Supreme Lord Vishnu, what shall I do for you and Lord Balaram, who are playing the part of ordinary humans? Om Jnana Tinamandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And before I read the purport, I just thought it was interesting that, and we'll read a little bit about this demon, but the Lord Janardana took the conch shell that had grown around the demon's body and went back to the chariot. It kind of, trying to visualize this, it just sort of sounded like the demon must be some kind of like large sea snail, and then the conch shell was grown around. You know how snails come out and then the shells. So it's interesting, because all of the, there's life in every species of life. There's that consciousness of Krishna in every species of life. Obviously, this is on a different level because this is in the spiritual world. So sea snails or whatever has the conch shell on the back, and in this world doesn't really have that sort of the same consciousness. But it's just interesting how so many forms are there in the spiritual world. And so the purport is the conch shell the Lord took from Panchajana, which is called Panchajanya, is the same one he sounded at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. So that was his personal conch shell, Panchajanya. According to the Acharyas, Panchajana had become a demon in a way similar to that of Jai and Vijay. In other words, though appearing in the form of a demon, he was actually a devotee of the Lord. The Skanda Purana, Avantikanda, describes the wonderful things that happened when Lord Krishna sounded his conch shell. Asi patra vanam nama sirna patra majaya yata rauravam nama narakam aurauravam abutada abhiraivam bhairavam kyam kumbhipakam apachakam. The hell known as Ashipatravana lost the sharp, sword-like leaves on its trees, and the hell named Raurava became free of its Ruru beasts. the Bhairava hell lost its fearfulness, and all cooking stopped in the Kumbhipaka hell. The Skanda Purana further states, Papa Shatyat Tata Sarve Vimukta Narakat Nara Padam Avyayam Ashadya. Their sinful reactions eradicated, all the inhabitants of hell attained liberation and approached the spiritual world. So that was from Krishna's wonderful reciprocation just with his spiritual master. He went to these hellish planets and blew the conch shell, and then was able to sort of halt a lot of the activities that were going on there to save a lot of the inhabitants from their particular hellish conditions. And we know from the, I'm not going to read a lot of it, but I just wanted to, I actually like to read chapter 26 of the 5th canto sometimes about a description of the hellish planets, just so I can remember to be extremely grateful for where I am and what I'm doing. So in chapter 26, and there's particular planets for particular, I'm sure many of you know, maybe some of you don't, there's particular planets for when you perform activities, karmic activities, or vikarmic activities in this particular life, after you leave your body, there's particular planets which individuals go to, because maybe some of you have seen that conditioned living entities are a lot of times creatures of habit. So in their lives, they tend to keep trying to do the same things over and over, for whether it be for enjoyment. I mean, it is for enjoyment, but whether it be for enjoyment or the Bhagavad Gita says conditioned living entities are helplessly acting. We're helplessly acting on the modes of material nature. And that's the case quite a lot of times, or most of the time in this material world, is the living entities are choosing to do the same thing over and over and over. And as we know, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. And when we're in the material world and we're trying to do that, it never works out. It's frustrating. And it's frustrated ultimately by time. So when the living entities have to give up this body and they go into their next destination, where is that next destination? Right? In this particular case, we're hearing about the son of Sandipani Muni, and it's kind of a cliffhanger because we don't know where he is yet. His father thought the ocean took him. He's not there. So now Krishna has gone to the hellish planets to ask Yamaraj himself, the Lord of Death, where did he go? And while he's there, he blew his conch shell to free a lot of those inhabitants from their horrible fate, which is like the most mercy that anyone could imagine. You're doing something, maybe someone's doing the same thing for 30, 40, 50 years during their life or more, and they're assured to have to live out their next sort of existence tonifying for those atrocities. And Krishna comes along and frees you from that certain sentence, I mean, that happens a lot. People get pardoned in prison, because of various reasons. Maybe it's a executive pardon from the top down, or maybe they were proven innocent, before, they died. They were going to have to pay out their life sentence in prison, and they were pardoned some kind of way. They were able to get free of that. And in this particular instance, when people are sent to these hellish planets that Krishna is visiting right now, there's probably no real hope of being pardoned, because they're there to rectify their activities that they had performed. they're there to pay out their dues, pay their dues. But, Krishna's so very kind to have visited such a place and freed all these inhabitants. And just some of the things that were mentioned here, like when I was reading it again, when it talks about the Bhairava hell lost its fearfulness. I'm not going to go into gross details because it's too much for a Sunday morning. But that's the place. Bhairava is a place where if you're accustomed during your life to offering human flesh to, a goddess or, whatever your concoction is, that it's okay, offering human flesh and then partaking and eating it. So, we can see those are extreme circumstances that people are getting sent for reformation because, in our lives now, even when when I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, I would never even conceive of such a thing. So the hellish planets are reserved for people who have done very mortifying, extremely mortifying activities. And Krishna kindly, he kindly freed them from those ramifications or those repercussions for those activities. And I was thinking a little bit more about the kindness of Krishna in this instance, and in so many instances in this, not only this chapter, but in the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna comes through different personalities, as we know, the Mahajanas and different forms of the Lord have. We see like Lord Nrsingadev, who also reciprocates with his devotee. It was very horrible circumstances that needed to be rectified. Just so many instances that Krishna does that. Just reflecting on the kindness and the mercy of the Lord, just the compassion, the supreme compassion. And likening that to, right now, today, I was thinking about, for some reason, I was thinking about the Lord being that compassionate in conjunction with Lord Jagannath. Lord Jagannath right now, all over the world, is appearing in all kind of places and circumstances to reciprocate with really not just devotees, but really anyone that's attracted to him, anyone that wants to even minutely render some little service to him. And we see Lord Jagannath, he's called Patita Pavana. He's the one that's the savior of the fallen. And it's stated in one of the scriptures, I know Prabhupada stated it maybe in a couple of places, that Jagannath is specifically merciful to children and to all manners of sinners. I don't know how else to say. People that are doing sort of sinful activities. And, that's always kind of bewildered me because Jagannath's such an unusual form. When Krishna went down to the ocean, and, he was obviously in his most beautiful form, and he was with Lord Balaram. He had his, main associate, his first associate. And the same thing when he went to the hellish planets, he was received very nicely. And, the form is so attractive of Krishna that, we can't really even imagine it with our material senses, it's so unbelievable. And in contrast, I always find it kind of interesting that, and also Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya are considered Patita Pavanas too. They give out the holy names without regard of who you are, where you're from, any of those considerations. They're freely giving out love of God in the form of the holy names. So they're also, Patita Pavana in that way. So what about Lord Jagannath? Because he just sort of appears, he appears and he doesn't really look like, just analytically speaking, he doesn't look like anything that you would kind of expect to be attracted to. He's attractive, and he's, he has different features that create like sort of a not a virtual, but sort of a spotlight on him, with huge eyes, and many times when he's adorned, it's quite a lot of Aishwarya, it's very kingly, it's very regal, like that. So, he's getting off of his throne, Jagannath, to go and give out mercy and to see and be seen, whoever is eager, or curious, or just maybe it's an accident. We've heard about so many times during the Rath Yatras around the world that, they're going down a main street in whatever country they're in or whatever place, they're just going down the street. And anybody can see Jagannath. Anybody can see him. Anybody can behold his, glory on a cart, and without any reservation, without any sort of hindrance, which is quite remarkable, because we don't have that, here at a temple, or most temples, Krishna's here, and we're all taught, we should focus on Krishna's feet first, and then move our way up, because we're supposed to be humble in that way. We're not supposed to be like overly familiar. We're supposed to understand that we're servants of Krishna. But with Jagannath, there's no restrictions like that. There's no rules. And also, just as a side note to that, or part of that whole reciprocation with everybody and anybody, Jagannath is Lord of the universe, so anybody in the universe, whatever their forms are, as a reciprocation to that, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, but particularly Lord Chaitanya, as we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's just out, and he's doing so many things to have Jagannath see and be seen, because he's the Lord, and he's twirling like a firebrand, and they're singing so beautifully, and the instruments are so melodious and loud, and just being enveloped with sound and sight, and just a feeling of awe. That's how Jagannath comes to give the mercy out to the masses, which is, if you think about it, it's almost unbelievable. I remember the last time I was, we were in a Rath Yatra, I was sort of in the Rath Yatra, was in March. We were in the parade in Raleigh, and at the end of the parade, it was sort of set up in a random parking lot that, just a chariot, and then all of a sudden there were tables of prasadam, and there was all these things. And just looking around in the middle of the city and seeing this beautifully decorated chariot in downtown Raleigh, it's so random and so incongruous. Who would have thought that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Lord would manifest in such a way, And as devotees, we know Lord Jagannath, we know his pastimes, we know all the things, but, people were just walking by, and they were just curious, and they didn't know what to think of what was going on, no idea. And that's like just the most causeless mercy we can imagine. That's just the causeless mercy of the Lord. Causeless means obviously without any cause, but who deserves it? How do we know? We just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Those people just happen to be at the right place at the right time. And these people in the hellish planet just happen to be at the right place at the right time. Because, the hellish planets are, you're not in the hellish planet. I've never read that there's maybe longer periods that people are, but it's not like purgatory forever, it's just some length of time that you need some rectification. And, Krishna just appeared in the most horrible places. I was reading about the position of the hellish planets. They're actually they're below the Earth in they're in the lower planetary system, and they're just right on the cusp of the Garbhodaka ocean. So they're really not too far out of the sort of disillusion area or the arena. They're just right above that. So they're there, they're getting all of their, they're paying all of their dues, God bless, they're paying all their dues. I mean, everybody should be sorry to hear about all these atrocities that happen to the conditioned living entity. But, as we know, and even in the best of circumstances, Krishna is rectifying us and correcting us for things we may have done that weren't appropriate. Those infractions into other people's lives or into other one's devotional service or our own devotional service. Krishna sometimes has to save us from ourself, right? I mean, I think anybody that has had any time, sort of downtime, if you're really fixed in Krishna consciousness and you're going, and you're constantly trying to serve, you're doing the best you can, and then all of a sudden there's something that takes you down, like, a twisted ankle, or a cataract surgery, or a kidney infection, or, something that has you actually sit down and think a little bit more about what you're doing, how you're serving the Lord, how you're able to serve the Lord, what you can do better to serve the Lord, so you can get back and you can go full blast again, right? But sometimes Krishna does those things to make us reflect on, not only on gratitude. I feel like that's something that maybe sometimes is lacking in everybody's sort of lives when they're thinking about maybe how they are lacking, how they're lacking because of various things. But we know that Krishna carries what we have, preserves what we have, and carries what we lack. So even that's not, whatever we think, however we think we're inadequate, that's not a lack, Krishna's going to carry us as far as we want to be carried, until such time as something drastic happens. If you do read the 5th canto, it's a little bit of scary reading, I'll say, especially if you haven't read it too much, or you're newer, or you're maybe haven't heard of some of these atrocities, or maybe don't want to hear about it. It's uncomfortable to read about, but it's also one of those things where we can read and learn, like any scriptures, part of the scriptures, we can read and learn about a little bit more about ourselves, so we can be a little bit more introspective about how we're doing, in this lifetime, how we're serving in this lifetime, how we're conducting ourselves, how we're treating others, all of those things, and not having an impersonal view of our journey. We can have our Krishna conscious journey, and it can be going along, in our own conception, it can be going along great, or we can be doing, something that we feel is satisfying and to hell with everybody else, but that's actually not what Krishna wants. Krishna, as we can see, And here, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, even with Krishna's devotees, such as, I always think of Dhruva Maharaj, comes to mind. He's going back to be in the association of the Lord, enter in the kingdom of God. But he says, no, I'm not going to go without my mother. And there was, there's other instances of devotees who, refuse to go without their associates. They want everyone to be able to have that same experience, because when you come to the point that you see others suffering, and maybe you have an opportunity for having a little glimpse of the toenail of the Lord's lotus feet, it actually is painful to think that someone else can't have that, that someone else is here and they're just sort of stuck in their normal day-to-day, like, we see in the hellish planets. In the Kumbhipaka hell, actually, it's stated that anyone who, during their life, greatly relished cooking animals alive, that the Kumbhipaka hell is a kitchen, and whoever had done that throughout their lives is having that done to them, because that's how it is, and that karmically speaking. So, in the Kumbhipaka kitchen of the Kumbhipaka hell, it's not a pretty scene. Maybe people are being shoved in boiling oil. I mean, we hear about certain cuisines in this world that you must take a lobster, and you can't let it die. You have to put it in salted boiling water immediately to be able to eat it. Same with crabs, because if the minute that they sort of leave their body, these particular species of life, these animals, they're kind of made up of different elements of the ocean that are, they're kind of like bottom feeders, so they're not really, the flesh is made up of of substances, actually Prabhupada likened it to, he called it mucus. And, a lot of these places in the hellish planets, several destination places of people that are doing various sort of atrocities during their lives end up in places that they're swimming in rivers and lakes that are made up of all of the gross substances of the body, bile, mucus, and such. I'm not going to be scatological and name all the substances, but they're in there and they're swimming around, and that's how it is with a little bit with not to that extent, but with animals on this planet. So if you're doing those things to harm other living entities, harm yourself, harm the environment, all these things have a soul. You'll end up in these kind of situations where it's not conducive to your devotional life. It's not conducive to furtherment, further advancement on that path. So I guess when I was reading all these, and this whole chapter is about gratitude. The whole chapter is about Krishna being grateful for what his guru has taught him. And this is all obviously for everybody's benefit. He doesn't need to be taught anything, and he's grateful. He's grateful for righteousness and for someone showing him the right path along the way. And, that should be our position every day, to have extreme gratitude for all of those personalities and circumstances and situations. Maybe they're uncomfortable. Maybe we really don't want to face them. Maybe we wish we had never really experienced them because they're so bad. But to be grateful for what we're doing every day along the path, and who's helping us and how they're helping us. And even if it's not help we thought we need it, obviously, because Krishna speaks through devotees. Krishna sends these things to his devotees to help them become their most authentic, best person to serve him on a daily basis. We're all getting shaken around in this bag. You know, all the rocks with all the jagged edges that are found are getting shaken around in this velvet bag to try to smooth each other out and make it so it's smooth. That's the rock tumbler before there was anything electric. And that's what we're doing here. That's what we're engaging in here with Sadhu Sangha. And, you know, we should all be very grateful for that opportunity. So, on that happy note, Jai Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, who are very purifying agents, and they're so sweet about it. And Vaishnava Sangha, Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Kanvandam Maravindanalayataptam Varhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Nandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Andani Yasa Sakalen Priyavriti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham
Yaharane katengele Papa dore jai Nikategele Papa dore jai Hemona doyala bravo Keba kotabai Keba kotabai Gangara parasa hoile Pashate pavan Pashate pavan Dashana pavitra kora eto maragon kora eto maragon Haristane aparare Tare harina Mangarare Tare harina Tomaras danara parara nahi paritram Tomas taneapa rarai nahi paritram Tomara hridoye sada Govinda Vishram Sada Govinda Vishram Govinda Kohena Vara Vaishnava Para Vaishnava Para Prati Jante Kori Asha Charane Raduli Charane Raduli Narotame Korondoya Hapanaraboli Ebaro Karuna Koro Vaishnava Goshai Vaishnava Gosha Patita Pavana Toma Vineke Honai Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Vaishnava Goshai, Vaishnava Goshai, Vaishnava Goshai, Jaya Vaishnava Goshai, Vaishnava Goshai, Vaishnava Goshai, Vaishnava Goshai, Jaya Vaishnava Goshai. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya 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 Panchatattva, 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 Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Jaya Radha Golokananda, Radha Golokananda, Shri Radhe, Radha Golokananda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. O Vaishnava Goswami, please be merciful to me now. There is no one except you who can purify the fallen souls. Where does anyone find such a merciful personality by whose mere audience all sins go far away? One becomes purified after bathing in the waters of the sacred Ganges many times, but just the sight of you purifies the fallen souls. This is your great power. The holy name delivers one who has offended Lord Hari, but if one offends you, there is no means of deliverance. Your heart is always the resting place of Lord Govinda, and Lord Govinda says, the Vaishnavas are in my heart. I desire the dust of your holy feet in every birth I may take. Please consider Narottama yours and be kind upon him. Narottama Das ki Jai. Darpana Marjanam Baba Mahajabani Nirvakanam Chandrikavicharanam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Murivadanam Patipadanam Viswadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Vedam Vijayate. Nuragaha Junadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Nadanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishvare Bhavatad Bhakti Raituki Twai Aninantandanuja Kinkaram Vitamam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Vivaya Chintaya Nayanam Naraya Vargadarudarada Gira.
matter for which we are